Hello and welcome to the first in a series of focusIR videos about atomic number 2, the chemical element known as helium. Over this series, you'll learn about what it is, what it's used for, and whether it's something you should be investing in. Today, we're talking about the fundamentals, and for that, I'm delighted to be joined by Peter Hitchens, a research analyst at Oak Securities, which is a specialist natural resources corporate broker. A warm welcome to you, Peter. And first off, what makes helium so unique?
Right. Helium, as you said, is the second element in the periodic table. It's a noble gas, so therefore it's completely inert, colorless, odorless, and unreactive. But I think the unique feature comes with the fact that it's the only element that doesn't freeze at absolute zero, 0 degrees Kelvin. And in liquid form, it is basically known as a quantum fluid. It has superconductivity and zero resistivity.
That's easy for you to say. I'm glad I don't have to say that word, Peter. But, what is helium used for and why is it a strategic natural resource?
I think, to quote one chief exec, it's not just about party balloons. I think its unique properties give it a range of uses that can't be substituted by other gases or elements. I think the first one is its freezing ability. The fact that it's liquid at 0 degrees Kelvin means it's used in cooling. And I suppose the obvious example is cooling the magnets in an MRI scanner. The other thing it's required for is the manufacture of semiconductors, whether it's fiber optics or your AI chip. It's also used in space travel, where it's used for purging, leak detection, and filling up of tanks for space rockets.
We are talking about the next paradigm, of course, but is helium considered a critical material, critical element by all the major large economies? Because I think there was a point in time, and maybe it still stands, that the US is the exception or was the exception. Does that remain the case?
It is a critical element because you can't really substitute it out. So if you're looking at the manufacturer of semiconductors or space travel, you have to use helium. The US was the first to specify helium as a critical mineral, but it's also been followed by areas such as the EU, which are putting similar status on it.
Understood. So therefore, with so many large economies interested in helium, what's the expected demand for it by, say, 2030, for example?
I think most people are of the view that it's going to grow by somewhere between 4 and 6% per annum compound. So that would take demand for helium from 6 BCF up to 8 to 9 BCF by 2030. The advances in semiconductors and space travel mean that this might actually prove to be conservative. The only thing that might break the demand growth is the high cost of the helium.
Yeah, understood. So therefore, if that's possibly a conservative estimate, is there therefore, in your opinion, a looming shortage and one that could possibly impact a country's economic security?
I'm going to sit on the fence here, yes and no. I think if you look at the main stalwart suppliers, such as the US, they're now in decline. The US has also sold off its helium reserve, so that had acted as a buffer for times of shortages. That being said, some of the big gas producers, such as Qatar and Russia, are expected to bring on additional supply, but that would increase the political risk of the supply.
Yeah, understood. So you've mentioned several countries there, but where does helium come from? Where would we find it? Is it in the ether or down below?
It's down below. It's created by the decay of radioactive materials, so it requires very old rocks. And this would be things like uranium and thorium. These elements have a very, very long half-life of billions of years. So it's got to be seen as a non-renewable source of helium. The helium travels upwards because it's so light, and similar to natural gas, gets trapped in pockets in the ground where it can be extracted. And as such, most helium actually comes through from associated production with natural gas. So it comes from basically the large gas producers such as the US, Russia, Qatar.
So, Peter, I've read that helium is the second most abundant element in the universe after hydrogen, hence its, atomic number 2. But why is it so recoverable quantities?
It's abundant in the stars, but not on Earth. And I think one of the problems is that helium is so light that when it escapes from underground into the atmosphere, it's light enough to actually move out of the atmosphere and escape into space. And that's why if you look at the atmosphere of the Earth, you're finding helium in parts per million rather than percentages.
So my final question is actually a tease to a video that you and I will be doing shortly. And who are the key players in the helium industry today?
As I mentioned earlier, the main source of helium comes from natural gas. So it comes from countries with huge gas reserves, whether it be the US or Russia. So the main producers will be the large integrated majors, such as ExxonMobil in the US, or the state entities such as Sonatrach in Algeria. But what we are seeing with the high price is there's a new breed of explorer coming to the market, essentially taking over from the traditional oil and gas explorer. And these are small, nimble companies that go out, look for helium to exploit, and either sell on their discoveries or produce the assets. But it's in relatively small quantities, but with the high value of the gas, they become an increasingly valuable asset.
Many thanks, Peter. Thank you for being so nimble. That's Peter Hitchens, research analyst at Oak Securities. I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Sarah.